Hello everyone, I am Joshua Smith of Apollo's Artifacts. It is April of 2019. This is a bit of a bonus episode, as it were. In this episode, I'm going to be covering the Country Walk case, or sometimes known as the Frank Fuster case. The myth makers of the Satanic Panic have tried to lump together a bevy of absurd and unrelated cases. This has them twisted up into what I call pretzel logic, where they defend preposterous, violent thugs like Frank Fuster. Fuster may be better known by the case name of Country Walk. Before we can even get to the Country Walk case, Fuster's violent criminal past is relevant. Fuster was first arrested in January of 1969 because an off-duty police officer and many other members of the public observed Fuster shoot a man with a rifle in cold blood following a minor car crash. Fuster even pointed his rifle at the police officer for good measure. Since the shooting victim died as a result of the weapon's fire, Fuster then faced 2 felony charges, first-degree manslaughter and reckless endangerment. His guilty plea landed him with a 10-year sentence, of which he served a mere 4 years. Reflecting the utter irresponsibility to which the Satanic Panic mythos drives them, the perpetrators of constructing the witch hunt narrative mindlessly accept without question Fuster's lame claims that the manslaughter was a mere accident. Listening to and reading many differing accounts of the killing from Fuster, it is immediately obvious that he is a compulsive liar who never takes any personal responsibility for his own actions. He often has made ludicrous claims in the past that there was a conspiracy out to get him, a baseless claim that he tried later regarding the Country Walk case itself. However, once more, before we can even get to that case, we must look at Fuster's child molestation that followed the manslaughter but preceded Country Walk. In September of 1981, Fuster was again arrested for the molestation of a 9-year-old girl. Typically, Fuster has made multiple claims about what he did. Once again, the makers of the witch hunt narrative are quick to defend the felon rather than the abused child, and throw around references which are coded language meant to rally their side by referring to some kind of, quote, crusade out to get Fuster and similar ilk. During the investigation of this case in 1981, Fuster admitted that he had also been a suspect in a separate alleged case of rape. The more one learns about the Fuster case, the more toxic it all is revealed to be. Finally, we come to Fuster's third or fourth run-in with the law, which emerged during 1984 in Florida. Many from the list of the usual suspects have hovered around the Fuster case to maintain the Satanic Panic mythology. They have selected an absolutely terrible person to waste ink and breath on in defending. Writers for the Village Voice and the Memphis Commercial Appeal have all made the rounds on this case by downplaying or trying to create confusion by associating this case with the McMartin trial. This is the central power of the mythology, as it generates a smokescreen for the guilty to get away by conflating unrelated cases of criminal behavior. But the witch hunt narrative is a well-nigh indefeasible rhetorical weapon. Frank Fuster's second wife divorced him following the child sex assault conviction. Soon he met Ileana Flores. At the age of 34, Fuster allegedly raped Ileana, according to a variety of reports as documented in Professor Rothschild's book, The Witch Hunt Narrative. Ileana was only 16 at the time, but this was the beginning of their relationship, and they married quickly thereafter. Puzzlingly, Frank had been able to maintain custody of his 6-year-old son, Noel, whose throat later tested positive for gonorrhea. Ileana soon opened a babysitting operation from their home in the Country Walk housing development. From the outset, the operation was illegal, as such businesses were not to operate within the development. They also did not obtain a business license. Nevertheless, many children were kept there of widely divergent ages, times, and so on during the 9 months of operation before authorities moved in and shut it down. Strong suspicions were raised when a child began to speak out to his mother and say disturbing and unusual things that were taking place during his time with the Fusters. Soon, other parents noticed marks on their child's body in private areas, odd behavioral changes, outbursts, and sexualized behavior. Some were even convinced that their children appeared to be drugged when they picked them up from the daycare service. An investigation quickly began that uncovered much, much more: touching, kissing, accusations of photography, that the Fusters were intimate in front of some of the children, had taken others into their bedroom, and so on. A warrant was prepared, but Fuster was warned a full 2 days ahead of time. A concerned parent who was observing outside noticed Fuster loading things into a vehicle and hauling them away from the home. Still yet a few interesting and possibly incriminating items were found there. This included a shocking photograph that could support some of the children's claims regarding Fuster's fascination with feces or coprophilia. The Fusters were soon indicted for sexual battery of multiple children. The kids revealed that they had been threatened. As such, Janet Reno's office took a very methodical approach to the case, very different than the one that we saw with the McMartin trial, the sloppy, haphazard mess made with the prosecutors of McMartin. This one would be clean and clear. Soon, Ileana began to reveal that Frank had physically abused her. During a probation violation hearing, Frank pretended to lapse into some sort of daze or catatonic state, staring off into oblivion, then began to tell wild, blatant lies that no babysitting operation had ever existed. He falsely claimed that he had never been in the home around any kids, despite dozens of eyewitnesses and the like. Just a small sample of Fuster's courtroom dramatics looked like this.
Accused child molester Frank Fuster will have more to deal with than just sexual abuse charges tomorrow. The attorney for the Country Walk defendant is accusing Fuster of assaulting him in jail last week. Lawyer Jeffrey Samick will again ask Judge Robert Newman for permission to be taken off the case. In court today, Samick complained that Fuster just won't cooperate.
His pleasure with me is of legion and of record, and also his repeated failures to follow my advice are also legion and of record.
News 4 has learned from court sources that an emergency hearing tomorrow, Samick will reveal the specifics about the assault and use it to convince the judge he must quit. But Judge Newman has already rejected 2 similar requests by both Samick and Fuster, the former director of the Country Walk babysitting service.
Fireworks in the Country Walk child abuse trial today. This time, those accusations were coming from the defendant, Frank Fuster's attorney. As we told you last week, Fuster's lawyer, Jeffrey Samick, told the court his client has verbally and physically threatened him. And today, for the 3rd time in 3 weeks, Samick asked to be taken off the case. But again today, that request was denied.
I just made a statement. I'm not going to accept any reply from you. I'm ready to proceed. Mr. Samick will do the best he possibly do under the circumstances to represent you.
It's not fair that my attorney makes all this false allegation without giving the defendant a chance to reply, Your Honor. I must state for the record what is the truth, because my attorney has just made a whole bunch of false allegations. I only need a few minutes of your time to clear myself.
Well, it's not a matter of clearing yourself, because I'm still, I have not granted his motion to withdraw as representing you.
They're now in the 3rd week of jury selection. Their pre-trial apparently made it very difficult to seat a jury in Miami.
There are more fireworks this afternoon in the Country Walk sex abuse case. This time, defendant Frank Fuster's accuser is his own lawyer. News 4's Tim Minton is live at the Metro Justice Building, where jury selection in that case was interrupted again. Tim?
Well, Robin, we told you last night at 6 that there was an assault last Thursday at the Dade County Jail. The assaulter was Frank Fuster, and the person assaulted was his lawyer. So, for the 2nd time today, Frank Fuster found himself in the middle, getting heat from both sides of the case. And for the 3rd time in the case, lawyer Jeffrey Samick sharply told the judge that he wants out.
He has assaulted me. He has threatened physical harm. I cannot advise him. I will not talk to him. I will not visit him. I will not sit at the same table with him.
The reason why I do not trust Mr. Samick is not because of anything other than the lies that he's coming to tell you. If my own attorney comes here and tell you, this man physically abused me, verbally abused me, and I know that that's not true, how can I trust him?
I'm not going to sit close enough to him at trial to whisper for conferences at trial, because I'm afraid he's going to stick his hands around my neck and strangle me.
It's a free country, and I guess this shows how free it is when a client can go against his attorney's advice. And that's what he's doing. But no, I'm not going to remove you, and I'm going to trial.
The case will go to trial with extra security. You can see the security guards standing up behind Frank Fuster, and that's the first time in this case that we've seen anything like that. The idea is to prevent harm, apparently, to Fuster's lawyer, Jeffrey Samick. In the meantime, we have had an unconfirmed report here that 5 jurors out of the 6 have now been seated in that case, and we're going to try to check that. Robin?
Tim, why can't Samick get off this case?
Well, the judge has to decide whether what is happening is being deliberately provoked by Frank Fuster in an effort to delay the trial, or whether there is a serious threat to his being effectively represented by Jeffrey Samick. The determination this morning is that Jeff Samick can still effectively represent him. Robin.
Jim. Thank you, Tim.
Country Walk child abuse case for the 3rd time this month. Defendant Frank Fuster's attorney asking to be taken off that case. Jeffrey Samick telling the court Fuster does not trust him, will not take his advice, and has threatened him both verbally and physically. Fuster denying those charges. The judge refused to remove Samick. Meantime, jury selection was completed just a short time ago. Fuster is charged with sexually abusing children at the Country Walk babysitting service.
The defense wanted to call in hired gun Ralph Underwager, but he was dumped due to lack of knowledge about the mental development of 3 to 4-year-olds. Fuster went on to claim that all of his accusers were liars. Ileana went on to testify against him and to substantiate the claims that Frank had orally copulated, which is to say raped, some of the children. Ileana testified in exchange for no deals, straight up. In addition to the 15 years for violation of probation, Fuster was given 165 years after a jury found him guilty. Despite all of this, the creators and manufacturers of the witch hunt narrative and Satanic Panic myth have tried their level best to paint Frank as a victim and to work towards his release from prison. Truly astonishing that a thrice-convicted felon, stone-cold killer, abuser, and compulsive liar draws in the mythmakers like flies to feces. Their tactics are entirely predictable. The coining of neologisms or inversion of long understood meanings of words, deflection, minimization, lumping together unrelated cases to create the air of hysteria and false accusations, and finally, outright lying, all of which are thoroughly documented in Dr. Chait's book. They will sustain the mythos at any cost whatsoever. They are essentially a loosely affiliated network that functions as propagandists for the defense teams and for accused pedophiles. They've written articles for the New York Times, Washington Post, National Review, even outlets such as Penthouse, of all places. In articles and books, they have collectively falsely claimed that hundreds or even thousands of McMartin-like cases took place, leading to abuses of power and false convictions, but this is demonstrably untrue. The crafters of the witch hunt narrative, or Satanic Panic mythos, often commit what is known in sports communities as the fallacy of the transitive property, which often goes something like this. Team A lost to Team B. Team C beat Team B. Therefore, Team C will beat or is better than Team A. Needless to say, such, quote, reasoning does not follow. Thus, it transforms in the mythology to this. Case X has some elements kinda similar to the McMartin case, and Case Y is similar to Case X. Thus, cases X and Y and any similar cases are transmuted into, quote, Junior McMartins, in the infamous phrase of Debbie Nathan. The truth of the matter is this. McMartin was an anomaly in many ways, as proven by Professor Chait. SRA, or satanic ritual abuse, was actually not at the root of dozens of cases that the mythologists lumped together. It has worked for several reasons. Many naturally support those we are told are the underdog. Many are suspicious of government overreach. Many understand the legal justice system has wrongfully sent away many based on false accusations. We know prosecutors often want convictions or guilty pleas at any cost. This has created some unusual bedfellows over the years by convincing leftists, conservatives, and libertarians that there was a hysteria, a witch hunt, a satanic panic that never actually happened, at least not the way that the mythmakers have constructed the past. The reality was far more complex and much more complicated than these simplistic narratives. For all of our society's claims about defending and protecting children, the evidence just does not support those claims. The adult world is massively biased against the children. The narrative has served as a complete disservice to those who are truly the weakest among us. The inherent tension between two truths is not just glossed over, but destroyed entirely. False accusations do indeed destroy lives. And we also must protect the children. However, the truth shows that even those who are found guilty of child molestation often only get probation, or minimum sentences, or slaps on the wrist. In others, we see fans swarm to the defense of the accused and contort themselves with the pretzel logic again to create defenses of their precious godlike persons that they adore and worship. Ultimately, the explanatory model that they offer fails. Frank Fuster is guilty, and the Country Walk case should never be reopened nor overturned. I will link all of the source material below, and if you've enjoyed this bonus episode, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share.